It's an honor to rise in this House today to speak to Bill C-30, and I want to thank the member for Edmonton Centre. I thought he had an incredibly compelling speech and did a fabulous job, Mr. Speaker. And as well, to follow up on his comments, all the best to you, Mr. Speaker. All the best in the future, sir. You know, Mr. Speaker, as I was walking into the House, up to the House today, I give it a bunch of thought. Thought about my family, thought about my staff, thought about my friends, thought about people of Essex, and what impact Bill C-30 has on each of every one of them, Mr. Speaker. Each of us are affected by this bill. And so I want to give many, many thanks to my family, to my staff, to my constituents of Essex for the opportunity to be in this place to speak to Bill C-30, Mr. Speaker. 15 months ago, after this Conservative's failure to heed the early warning signs of the pandemic ravaging Asia, Parliament was shut down for 3 weeks to flatten the curve. These many months later, this government's record is characterized by bad ethics, poor decision-making, undemocratic measures, and huge deficits. This government, propped up by the NDP, Bloc and Green Party, has repeatedly failed Canadians. From their early and repeated power grabs, their failure to shut down international flights in the early stages, their failure to secure PPE, and their disastrous vaccine procurement and rollout. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, we had the ill-conceived Canada Student Support Program and resulting WE scandal that led to the prorogation of Parliament to avoid scrutiny. For 15 months, we have seen the Liberals reward their Liberal buddies with contracts and now judicial appointments. Only the Conservatives, as the official opposition, has stood against Liberal excesses. The NDP has voted with the Liberals basically at every turn, even joining with them to shut down committees to help the Liberals avoid scrutiny. At a time when Canadians needed true leadership, ideology and partisan interests have trumped principle. Why am I mentioning this record, Mr. Speaker, in a speech on the budget? Because post-COVID Canada needs an economic recovery plan, and yet again, this Liberal, NDP, Bloc, Green Party alliance has failed to offer anything but shiny baubles. The record speaks for itself, Mr. Speaker. The NDP Liberal budget is a massive letdown for workers in my riding of Essex. This is not a growth budget and fails to put forward a plan to encourage Canada's long-term prosperity. Mr. Speaker, I have 3 children, just entering adulthood, and my first grandchild was born just a few weeks ago. I think of families in my riding, Mr. Speaker, generations who have made their home in Essex County, and I wonder, will my children and their children be able to have the things that previous generations took for granted? A well-paying job, affordable housing, saving for their children's education. I am receiving hundreds of emails from my constituents, Mr. Speaker, who remember the Canada of my youth. They tell me they have no heart to celebrate Canada this year. They see the writing on the wall, Mr. Speaker. Rampant corruption, unchecked, has tarnished our hallowed halls. Bill C-10 threatens our Charter of Rights. Deficit spending and high debt always leads to tax increases and program cuts down the road. It is an open question if we will be able to protect our social safety net and our seniors' pensions, Mr. Speaker. They should be able to enjoy their retirement worry-free. As this government continues to print money against Canada's GDP, as Conservatives predicted, inflation has risen to 3.6%. The cost of housing has soared, as I said previously, putting it out of reach for many young families. As the cost of living rises, so does the cost for basics like food, which hurts the lowest income and seniors on a fixed incomes the most. This government spending today borrows against our children's future. This is not a cliche, Mr. Speaker. It is a simple reality that everyone who has a personal or household budget has to manage understands. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has noted that a significant amount of the Liberal spending in the budget will not stimulate jobs or create economic growth. Conservatives support getting help to those who have been hit the hardest by the Liberals' failure to create jobs. In fact, the Liberal government has spent more and delivered less than any other G7 country. Canada's Conservatives were very clear that we wanted to see a plan to return to normal that would safely reopen the economy and get Canada back to work. It's very clear that the Liberal NDP budget was more about partisan politics than creating jobs or growing our economy. With their uncontrolled spending, the Liberals made it clear that they have no plan to return to a balanced budget. Throughout the pandemic, Conservatives have made emergency support programs better for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Alas, unemployed Canadians hoping to see a plan to create new jobs and economic opportunities for their families, workers who have had their wages cut, Mr. Speaker, and hours slashed, they're hoping to see a plan to reopen the economy. They were let down, Mr. Speaker. Layoffs at the Fiat Chrysler plant in Windsor means that expectant mothers will see their maternity benefits cut, with all the money going out the door in income support. What has this government done for them? Small business owners have been devastated by repeat lockdowns. Many have closed their doors permanently. Many are hanging on by the slimmest of margins. Gyms like Xandu in my riding have petitioned the government. I've stood in this House, Mr. Speaker, for them for ongoing aid. It will take months for them to recover if they do at all. Hair salons and barbershops, many of them owned and operated by women supporting their families, and many not qualifying for business support. Travel advisors, Mr. Speaker, went 15 months without any revenue. What does this budget do for them? Absolutely nothing. Manufacturers in my riding whose entire business model is based on cross-border transactions have experienced losses of major contracts because this government did not see fit to deem them essential despite repeated appeals to their government, Mr. Speaker. It's a tone-deaf government that could not grasp the concept that you cannot export goods without the free movement of the people who make and sell them. The effects for this will be felt for years. It will take many years for manufacturers to get back to where they were. While they brag about the numbers, the Liberals fail to understand that the stuff manufacturers are working on now was negotiated 2 years ago, before the pandemic. Manufacturing is 13% of Canada's GDP. This sector is the largest contributors of taxable income. In Essex and Windsor, 54,000 jobs are represented in this industry. 85% of those goods produced go to the United States of America. Manufacturers have done a good job. They were mandated to keep open, and they did everything required, Mr. Speaker. Yet this government did not see fit to recognize their good work. When I first raised this issue with the minister in the House and other government officials appearing before the Special Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations, this government's response revealed their total ignorance and outright indifference. So finally, Mr. Speaker, I would be remiss if I did not mention the loved ones who have been separated by the Canada-U.S. border closure. Even when changes were made to broaden the definitions, many were left out or could not afford quarantine for 14 days. And then to make matters worse, Mr. Speaker, their government adds quarantine hotels and exorbitant costs with unsafe, substandard care. The human toll has been deep. Here's but a couple of examples. Grandparents unable to meet their grandchildren for the first time. Parents looking to be with their son graduating after 10 years. Mr. Speaker, the simple fact is this budget does nothing to secure the long-term prosperity for Canadians. It does nothing to help my excellent riding of Essex. Canada's Conservatives got us out of the last recession, Mr. Speaker. Canadians who are worried about their future know that we can and will do it again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.